oceans of wisdom.
I go for refuge to the Sangha.
I go for refuge to Sangha,
And resolve with all beings.
and resolve with all beings.
I will seek peace and happiness for the many.
I will seek peace and happiness for the many,
And transform this world into Buddha lands unimpeded.
and transform this world into Buddha lands unimpeded.
Please return to your places for another shorter period of meditation. Please join me in some stretching, a mindful end to our meditation practice. Stretching the lower back, looking up, remembering to breathe as we do these exercises. Nice inhale as we stretch. Exhale as we fold. Stretching up. Stretching to the left. And then the right. Clasping the hands behind the back and leaning forward. Spinal twist to the left. And to the right. And now placing the hands high on the hip, we do some big circles. Our whole body, whole upper body. And reverse. Leaning to the left. And the right. Clasping your hands behind your head, some sharp outward breaths. Twisting left, right. Stretching high. Abdominal breathing. Because we were inside, we asked people to remain masked during the Dharma talk. I would like to ask your permission to remove my mask so that you can hear me more clearly. So if you give me permission, please raise your hand if I have any objectors. Okay, thank you very much. To the Dhammapada reading in just a moment. How's the sound? Sound okay?
That's great.
Great. So first, I don't have the formal reading with me, but I want to offer gratitude to the ancestors that occupied this land before us, Native American tribes. This used to be an African American block, and our original temple building was initially owned by an African American dentist along with his family. So we just offer gratitude. And now the Dhammapada reading. This week, it is from the chapter called The Seeker. Seeker, do not be reckless. Meditate constantly, or you will swallow fire and cry out no more. If you are not wise, how can you steady the mind? If you cannot quieten yourself, what will you ever learn? How will you become free? With a quiet mind, come into that empty house, your heart, and feel the joy of the way beyond the world. Look within, the rising and the falling. What happiness, how sweet to be free. It is the beginning of life, of mastery and patience, of good friends along the way, of a pure and active life. This Dhammapada reading today is all about the joy of following the way, the path with good friends. And it ties into our themes for this fall period, maybe the whole year, of the three jewels and the three great learnings. So we spent the past several weeks talking about the three jewels. At every service, we go for refuge to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. And so one version of that I really like very well is I go to the Buddha, my deeply awakened mind, which must be cultivated to be known fully. I go to the Dharma, truth manifesting everywhere, which must be cultivated to be known fully. I go for refuge to the Sangha, deep friendships and interconnections of all beings, which must be cultivated to be known fully. So the word that we can hear is cultivation. And that's what the three great learnings are all about. They're also known as the Threefold Trainings. So teachers are not eligible to answer this question, but how many of you have heard of the three great learnings or the Threefold Training? Okay. So Hassan, can you name them?
Can I name them? Oh, I'm going to say no. I cannot name them.
Okay.
But I learned this from you yesterday, so this is very fresh.
Oh, right.
So I'm cheating because you just told me about this.
All right. Very good. Okay, so these three great learnings, ways that we cultivate ourselves, are Sheila, Samadhi, and Prajna. So let me give you some definitions, and then we'll talk about each of them. So Sheila is also known as ethics, and it has to do with our behaviors and how we move about in the world. It's we learn non-harming. That's the purpose of our practice of ethics and morality. And we try to extend that to every aspect of our lives. So that is Sheila, or ethics. The second great learning is Samadhi, or meditation. And this learning is aimed at making our minds supple, disciplined, clear, tranquil, focused, and empty. So when our minds are calm and clear, we're capable of absorbing the world in a different way. And the third great learning is prajna, or wisdom. This has to do with insight, and it's highly related to and an extension of samadhi. our meditation. So we see things more clearly and begin to realize deeper truths that are not accessible during our normal analytical thinking patterns. So it's interesting. I know when I first came to Buddhism, I had not heard of the three great learnings, but also I had this impression that Buddhism is all about meditation practice, and that's what you do when you're a Buddhist. But as we move down this path, we discover it's a whole lot more. So today I just kind of want to give an appreciation for this. Is it right side up?
Yes.
Yay! I don't know, can the camera come just a little bit closer to see this? So now, as we look at the three great learnings in this particular depiction, what are you seeing that looks familiar? So under ethics, we have right speech, we have right action, we have right livelihood. Under Samadhi, we have right effort, right mindfulness, right meditation. And under Prajna, we have right view and right intention. Has anybody heard of these things?
Yes, and you didn't tell me yesterday.
Right, there you go. Okay, so what are they, Michael?
The Noble Eight Truths.
Noble Eightfold Path, very good. That's exactly right. And this is this is the Buddha's very first teachings. He gave his disciples four noble truths. And the last of the Four Noble Truths was his Eightfold Path. So the Four Noble Truths, as a refresher, is basically suffering exists. The second is we're the cause of our own suffering generally. The third is there is a way out of suffering. And the fourth is the way out has to do with this Eightfold Path. So I'm going to talk a little about each of these buckets. My goal today is just to give you an overview of the three great learnings, and then over the next several weeks, we'll probably be talking about them more. As I was preparing this Dharma talk and looking at how various traditions use the three great learnings or talk about the three great learnings, the most traditional, the oldest, has to do with let's group the Eightfold Path into these three great learnings, and let's look at it as something that's kind of linear, a step-by-step kind of process. And so you enter the path with Sheila, and then you move on to meditation, and then you move on to Prajna, so very linear. And as we work with this here, and also as you sort of learn the path, you realize it's really not so linear, that what we do is bounce around back and forth between all of these. But let's take a deep look at each, and then we'll talk about how they're interrelated. So under Sheila, or ethics learning or training, this has to do with precepts. Some of you have taken precepts. Some of you may consider taking precepts in the future. These are the basic guidelines that we use in daily life to interact with the world in a more enlightened way. And there are various versions of the precepts. The ones that we work with here, we take 8 precepts. There are versions that are 10. If you're a monk or nun, it could be as many as 227. Lots and lots of guidelines. So let's talk about the key ones so you get a flavor of what I mean when I'm talking about precepts and the three great learnings. I decided what I wanted to do is, well, what if I tried to group these precepts into those categories of right speech, right action, and right livelihood. And actually they, even though it's not a pure classification, they do fall sort of nicely into that. So under right speech, and the version I'm reading to you comes from, and of course I'm not remembering at the moment, but they're stated affirmatively. So under right speech, we have, I take up the way of not speaking falsely. And that has to do with cultivating truth. That's the first one. The next one is, I take up the way of not discussing the faults of others. That has to do with friendship. The next one is, I take up the way of not praising myself while condemning others. And that has to do with cultivating respect. And then the final example I have is, I take up the way of not slandering the three treasures, Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. That has to do with cultivation of faith. And the precepts came from the list of 10 Bodhisattva precepts. So now let's take a look at right action, the second on my list. And precepts that go here are, I take up the way of not harming. That has to do with cultivating compassion. I take up the way of not stealing in order to cultivate virtue. And I take up the way of not misusing sex, cultivating purity. Under right livelihood, this one is a little bit less specific. There is one specific precept regarding right livelihood. I take up the way of not involving myself in the trade or production of firearms and chemical poisons. And so this includes intoxicants as well. And that's cultivating our seed of wisdom. And in the Buddhist time, he also talked about you need to find a way of earning a living without needing to harm others. For example, not being engaged in the slave trade, or not being engaged in making prophecies, these kinds of things. So in our day and age, I love that our tradition has developed 6 right livelihood guidelines, because this gets beyond specific occupations, and it talks more about how we move about in our livelihood. And so these right livelihood guidelines, we have consume mindfully, pause, breathe, listen, practice gratitude, cultivate compassion and loving kindness, discover wisdom, and accept constant change. So you can do all of these within the context of whatever livelihood you are practicing. So through cultivating the precepts, through cultivating Sheila, I keep looking because I have a screen there. I mean, I can see how it looks. We are trying to work with our compassion, our faith, our purity, our truth. So when we are in the Sheila realm, we're working with those things. However, we can always cultivate it when we're in some of the other 3 great learnings as well. So how do we cultivate Sheila in daily life? daily reflection helps. How many of you keep a journal? Anybody keep a journal? Several of you. Okay, this is a wonderful way to take time each day to just reflect on what we're doing with those behaviors and keep us moving down the right path. We can study and we can take formal training programs. Some of you have taken the formal training program of precepts. I know a couple of you here recently took them. Some of you took them a while ago. That's one way our temple supports cultivation of ethics. And as we've been talking about the last several weeks, it helps to have Sangha, good Dharma friends, so that we can see examples of others who are cultivating good behaviors and good ethics. Okay, now we move on to Samadhi, or meditation. And as I say, when I first came to Buddhism, I thought this was what Buddhism was. And my image of that was you just sit on mats and cushions and you learn to relax, and then you're able to go out into the world in a relaxed way. But as always, there's more to it than that. So again, training in meditation helps one achieve, that's kind of a nice list, calm, clarity of mind. And it's to make the mind supple, disciplined, clear, tranquil, focused, and empty. Why do we want to do all those things? So that we're open to learning and so that we're open to transforming ourselves. So as we look at this bucket, though, we see it's more than just meditation specifically. We see that it includes right effort and right mindfulness as well. So what do those mean? Right effort has to do with, my notes are all messed up, so I may need to wing it from here on out. Let me see. It's always helpful that I can say it more accurately. Yes. So one interpretation of right effort is making the mind fit for work. So I thought that was an interesting take on it. So we're not doing this necessarily, this mindfulness meditation stuff to relax. Instead, what we're doing is to make our minds fit for work. And so we incline our minds toward practice. And we have to make some sacrifices in order to do that. You can choose to spend your efforts, not in mindfulness, but rather spend your efforts, watching television, partying, these kinds of things that are just sort of nice, fun ways to relax. And it's okay to do that, but if we're going to practice mindfulness and meditation, it takes a little bit of effort. And the idea is to give make choices, use our energies toward wholesome things rather than unwholesome things. Two kinds of energy that I have noticed arising as I work with these meditation practices are, number one, faith. I have this energy of faith means that, yeah, it's possible to do, even though it doesn't always seem possible. And the other energy has to do with what we call great doubt. So this is not just ordinary doubt, but great doubt, asking ourselves questions like, is this really true? And putting our energy toward discovery in that particular way. So that's right effort. Right mindfulness has more to do with active, what we call active concentration. That means then your mind is dwelling on whatever is happening in this present moment. So it's very active. You're just sort of in the flow, noticing what's going on around you. And so then you nourish the object of your attention toward looking deeply, toward understanding, toward really being present with someone who's talking to you. All these kinds of things are right mindfulness. I bet all of you practice some sort of right mindfulness today since you got up. So let me see if I can come up with an example, and then maybe you can come up with a few more. So right mindfulness today, we woke up and we saw that there was rain and we were going to move inside and we had to prepare the Buddha Hall to receive people. And so as we did that, we were present with where to place things for appropriate social distancing and just preparing mats and cushions very nicely and carefully. When drinking a cup of tea this morning, maybe you use 2 hands, that kind of thing. Does anybody have another example of mindfulness that comes to mind for them? Bring mindfulness into your mind and come up with an example. Yeah, that's all.
Often I'll fill a cup of tea, like all the way to the top so it's difficult not to spill it. And then I'll challenge myself to walk all the way around the block without spilling any tea.
Wow.
So I not only do I hold it with 2 hands, but I walk and you have to breathe right and you have to sort of watch the ground. And sometimes I do this like almost every day. Sometimes I achieve it.
That's a cool one. Any other examples that people have? Yeah.
For my daily supplements, taking them out of the bottle, the different ones, and putting them in this little square space for 3 times a day, taking supplements.
Okay, so taking supplements very mindfully and carefully so you have the right ones at the right time of day. Other examples?
For me, picking shell beans and trying very hard to only pick shell beans.
Shell peas, yeah.
No, picking shell beans. in the
Shell
field.
beans,
And
okay.
Just try to keep my mind on just that.
All right. Thank you. So Michael has a farm and there's all sorts of opportunities in farm life for mindfulness. Those are some good examples. So now let's move on to what is this meditation or right concentration. I think it's listed on here. So this one has to do with selective attention. So, or selective concentration. So active concentration means being very present in the flow of things. And selective concentration is this one-pointed focus. And that's what we, in our tradition, teach in our meditation class. And it's what we practice when we come here to service, for example. And the way that we focus our attention initially is to work with the breath and count the breath. So there's all sorts of concentration practices that you may have encountered, like some people meditate on a candle, breath, as I say, is another one. Some people maybe use a mantra, chanting, this kind of thing. So now as we get into meditation and start to move toward prajna, words are going to start to fall short a little bit because this is, it's more of an experience than something that I can just talk about and explain to you. And all of you, I know, have dabbled in this meditation practice, this concentration practice. And you've had the experience over time of once the mind becomes really settled, then you're able to see things maybe from a different perspective or a little more clearly. You're able to absorb this flow, this constant flow of thoughts. And if you sit long enough, you can watch that sort of becoming still and becoming a little bit more open, ready to experience things, not just from your analytical mind or your habitual patterns, but something else instead. And so then that it's making us ready for prajna. And here, these are so highly related, these samadhi practices and these wisdom practices, that at some point you can't distinguish between them. So prajna has to do with wisdom or insight. And so training in wisdom results from training in meditation. Meditation tends to make our mind still and insightful. When the mind is still, we see things more clearly and realize a deeper truth not available to us during normal perception. And this contains two components. And my notes, of course, are missing. So basically, when we talk about right view, what we are talking about is a deep understanding of the Four Noble Truths. And so when the Buddha presented these, the Threefold Path, actually he put that one as first. This is first on the list because with this deep understanding, it's like you have a view and you can see that mountain in the distance and where it is that you're going. So it's a good sense of the Four Noble Truths. And then this right intention has to do with our commitment to the practice. Every New Year's Eve, so we make intentions for the years or resolutions for the year. But the intentions we're talking about here have to do more with the intentions and how we live, and it has to do with aligning with what our very deepest values are. So a lot of those intentions may be expressed in terms of Sheila, right speech, right action, right livelihood, because that makes it a little bit clearer what we're trying to do. So if I have the intention, for example, based on values, maybe the intention to cultivate compassion. Cultivating compassion means I have to start giving up my idea of a separate self. And I have to start thinking in terms of no self, no other, and how we are interconnected. If I'm trying to align with maybe my value of not being greedy, I'm getting back to the three poisons now, greed, anger, and delusion. So if I'm trying to not be greedy, then I have the intention of being generous, of sharing Dharma assets, of sharing whatever it is that I have. And if I have the intention of not being angry, then I'm cultivating perhaps loving kindness kind of behaviors towards others. Okay, so in the Zen tradition, as we look at Sheila and Samadhi, we have these shortcut meditation practices. It's called Wadu. And if you want to learn about that, I would suggest meditate a lot and come to a retreat where you can learn what this shortcut is all about. A wadu basically is a question that you can't answer, so it challenges you to give up your thinking. And so instead of sitting and cultivating meditation for hours and hours and hours, and days and years, though you need to do some of that, you are finding a different way to get beyond your typical patterns. I'm not going to say too much more about that because I will get more and more confusing. But as you can see now, we have these 3 great learnings, Sheila, Samadhi, Prajna, and I just wanted to give you a flavor of them today. Yeah. And now let's take the time for any questions or comments that may have come up to you, may have come up for you during this Dharma talk.
I have a question, it's kind of an observation. It's kind of like with those 3, they're like more circular, kind of to your point, instead of being linear. And where you on ramp really kind of reflects on how you look at everything.
Yeah.
I don't know where this fits in with kind of your deliberate action, but like, for example, for me, when I come to the temple, I gotta get my wiggles out first, so I spend 10 minutes here before everybody else comes in to try to get my meditation. Well,
You said some really excellent things, and I'm sorry to ask you to repeat, but for the benefit of our audience
Okay.
out there,
Okay,
you're good.
so where my thought was is, again, I'll reiterate from the beginning, it seems more circular, non-linear, and where you on-ramp on to that is really reflective on what you're gonna see at that time.
Uh-huh.
And where I was kind of confused at the end is where in practicality, I know to have a good meditation and constructive by coming here as opposed to independently, I've got to come here a little bit earlier in order to get, like I said, my wiggles out so that I can have a real effective meditation. So that by the time we're having our second meditation, that's when the mind is
Ready
really
to
clear.
go. Thank you.
Here, let me put it on mute.
I have a brief comment. I can't see your 3 parts anymore, but I believe the prajna you had mentioned, you had mentioned that theoretically one pathway is Sheila, Samadhi, Prajna in a linear way.
Uh-huh.
And then later you had mentioned that the Buddha had put Prajna first. Did I misunderstand? Okay. So that makes all the sense to me because the first linear way I couldn't really conceive of. I can only conceive of it the opposite way. So first intention and view, which leads me to sit and meditate, which leads me to be better doing everything else. So for me, it works blue, orange, yellow.
I'm not trying to follow up a little bit on Hassan. If, excuse me, if the Buddha put right view and right intention first, then when we look at the 8 Noble Truths, why are they last?
Okay, so this depiction that I placed is a typical path of training for somebody completely unfamiliar with Zen. The right view, right intention seems too abstract, too lofty to a lot of people. And so a lot of times it starts with Sheila, and then it goes to Prajna, and then I'm Sheila, Samadhi, Prajna. But yeah, I mean, the Buddha would have said, start with Prajna. Remember, he was talking to ascetics that had practiced for a long time, and they were already pretty far down the path, so they could grasp that. Okay. All right. Well, let's leave it here for today. And I'll just hold it. Thanks for being part of our experiment of being inside. We'll have some announcements today, and I'll say the 4 great vows, and then we'll do announcements. So please join me. All beings, one body.
All beings, one body.
I vow to liberate.
I vow to liberate.
Blind passions, one root.
Blind passions, one root.
I vow to terminate.
I vow to terminate.
Dharma gates, one mind.
Dharma gates, one mind.
I vow to penetrate.
I vow to penetrate.
The great way of Buddha.
The great way of Buddha.
I vow to realize.
I vow to realize.
And then we hand the microphone.
Well, do I want a microphone and a mask?
You are soft spoken.
Yep, we'll be able to hear you through the mask.
So, good. I'm glad to be here this weekend again and see you all. There's a couple new faces. And it's a slight experiment to come indoors. I hope it works out for the future. We got about 20 people here. So let's look forward to some more of these. And then some other things going on that I can tell you about on weekdays.
He's visible. I moved it.
She had to.
Yeah, you were better before because you're too tall. There you go. Perfect.
Okay. So as I was saying, we've got several things going on during the week and on the weekends. One of my favorites is yoga classes with David Black here on Tuesday evening, 6:30 to 8. You can just stop in if you like, try it out, stay a while. We've got meditation class, I think. There was no one on the list, so I was wondering if I should announce it.
That's new. It's coming. It's starting in October 21st.
Oh, okay, October 21st then. It's a Thursday evening from 7 to 8:30. And the really big news is, you should probably know, the fall meditation retreat. It's the Yongmeng Junction. It starts on Wednesday evening at 7, and then wraps up in the morning on the 10th, which is Sunday. And that, for me, is one of those really great opportunities to deepen your meditation practice and have some great camaraderie doing it. And we've also got the fall practice period that you might have heard of. We're doing this as a group after the Sunday services, and it's led by a couple of our senior members who've been through training, and it's on a poem called the Shin Shin Ming. It sounds really interesting.
And Goksam is here. Did you want to talk about?
Yeah, that's okay.
Okay.
Oh, hey, Goksam.
Hey.
Yeah. So that starts today, right?
Yeah, today's the first session.
Where will you meet?
I assume we're meeting here, but I'm not
Dharma
sure.
Recovery is also meeting here. So
Okay.
we'll have a conversation.
Maybe we go outside. It's
Yeah.
okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Well, is the library open?
Yes.
Okay, we'll figure that out here after the service. From what I understand, we're going to pass on the tea ceremony afterwards or get together, but probably get to say goodbye to everyone out here in the lobby after everything's concluded. And then I just wanted to mention too, we've got volunteering opportunities either after the service or we have a regular period on Saturdays from 3 to 5. And I'd love to see you there. I come to that often and get a great chance to be outside, work in the garden, and any other opportunities that might be out there.
Could you talk about the hunger walk next week?
Yes. Yeah, that's going to be one of our yearly things. And this particular year, we decided to do it kind of more locally, because we want to keep everyone safe. And so it's going to be part of the family service next week. But don't let that discourage you if you don't have a family to bring. You can show up, as always, and take part, I believe, in the whole thing. But the main plan there is to do some walking meditation and raise some money for a really worthy cause of the Buddhist global relief. And that's pretty much the same time.
That happens instead of regular Sunday service.
Okay.
But I just want to clarify, this is for everyone. I
Yeah.
don't like it pigeonholed as a family program because the hunger walk is really so important to, raise funds for really an important cause, Buddhist global relief, which is serving hungry people all over the world. So don't have it in your mind that it's just something for families, because we want everyone to come.
Okay, good. That's really helpful. And I would like to be here too. And then, as I was saying, there's a volunteering clipboard outside if you want to sign up, along with a bunch of other clipboards that are out there for things like the Yongbing Junction Retreat. Each day you would like to come. You don't have to be here for the whole thing. You can come for certain days, or there's even an online version too. And let's see. So thank you, as always, for being here, and your donations are accepted with gratitude, and working with the temple too is as well. And so, well, I'll pass this on over to
Let's just,
Audrey.
just one more thing is this room will be used by the yoga class on Tuesday. So we have to completely put all the mats and cushions away, roll up the carpets, and just prepare it, clean it. So if you're able to stay, that would be appreciated.
We'll figure out how to pass the microphone by next time, maybe. Okay, so let's please stand, and we'll do 3 formal bows together to end our service. Thank you again for being here today.